everybody. It is Dean Z with a very special A to Z episode. This is the time of year where people are starting to make decisions about where to attend law school. And many people, at least that I see, are very interested in clinics. And there are a lot of things about clinics that vary among schools. And so I had the great idea to bring on our amazing Associate Dean for Clinical Affairs, I believe we call it. Is that what we call it? Or just
Associate Dean for Experiential Education.
I was not even close. But I understand the point of what she does. This is Debra Chopp, who has been a professor at the law school since 2005 and has been in charge of the clinics writ large since 2018, and thus has a great deal of information, much more than I could ever hope to have. And we're going to be speaking generally about what you might want to be looking for if you are choosing a school because you want to do a clinical experience. And we'll also be talking specifically about Michigan, because of course that is our particular expertise, but we hope this will be generally useful for a lot of people who aren't considering Michigan at all. So can we get started, Debra?
We can.
Excellent. All right, let me ask you some of my tricky questions. Number one, why do law schools even offer clinics? And why should a student take a clinic? I guess maybe I should start with, what's a clinic?
Oh, that is a
So what is it? Why?
question,
Yes.
Sarah Zierfoss.
Three-parter.
Three-part question. Okay, what is a clinic? A clinic typically, or primarily at Michigan, a clinic is an opportunity for students to practice the law that they're learning and develop lawyering skills that they would not otherwise get, because it's hard to develop skills when you're sitting in a classroom and listening to a lecture or even participating in a lecture. You don't learn how to interview a client that way, or counsel a client, or argue in court, or conduct a negotiation. So a clinic is like a little mini law firm that represents low-income clients primarily on legal issues. And
Yes, that's perfect. And now I'm going to interject another observation, maybe a question, which is at the beginning when I got your title so woefully wrong, it says experiential education. So clinics are a subpart, right,
Correct.
of experiential education, and there's lots of other things that count in there, like legal practice. Our first-year legal writing program is part of an experiential experience. That's a terrible sentence, etc. But we're just focusing on clinics here today.
Right, though we might talk about other experiential opportunities a little bit. I believe the first part of your question, though I cannot remember, which is the problem with the compound question, is why do law schools even have clinics?
Right.
I think you said that.
Right, and why would anybody want one?
Right. So the ABA requires students to complete experiential education credits before a student graduates. A clinic is one way, I think an excellent way, to get those experiential education credits.
Okay.
And why would a student take a clinic? Because it offers so many benefits. In addition to the skills development, clinics are a small classroom environment, and students get to form really close relationships with each other, really close relationships with clinical faculty. They also get to do some good in the world. They're providing free legal representation for people who otherwise would not be able to afford a lawyer.
I can say anecdotally, I've spoken to 1 cajillion alumni who say that their clinic was a huge part of what they loved about their educational experience, and that it was incredibly meaningful to them.
Yeah, we write a lot of letters of recommendation.
Right.
For real, because we get to know our students really, really well.
Right, right. And a lot of the people who really enjoyed the clinic are people who went into very different sorts of work.
Yes.
Right? So
clinics are not just for public interest students.
Right.
At all. They teach you skills that you can use in any area of practice that you go into.
Yeah, so excellent. All right, you did great on that terrible question that I asked you. It's been a long time since I was a litigator, and I should have known better. Okay, so I know what we do here at Michigan, and I'd love for you to describe that, but I also wonder if you could weave in, what are some of the different models of clinics at, what's the range of clinics? What's it look like at other places too?
Right. You could think of clinics as falling along a continuum where on one end of that continuum, students would really spend their clinical time working at a nonprofit organization, representing the clients of that nonprofit, being supervised by lawyers who work at that nonprofit. And then maybe the law school the student is attending will hire that supervisor, as an adjunct to provide some of that supervision and maybe also some classroom sessions too. And then there are, I would say in the middle, a student might be representing clients from an organization, but the professor teaching the class is holding the class at the law school and maybe has a stronger affiliation with the law school. And then on the other end of the continuum, and this is really where Michigan falls, is that we have many in-house clinics that are run by full-time clinical faculty. And the benefit of this is that the faculty are lawyers, and our job is to provide excellent legal representation to our clients, but we're also teachers. And that is a huge part of our mission. Our mission is to teach our students, help them develop their professional identities, help them go out into the world and provide excellent legal representation to people and, make us proud.
Right. I will say, I know a lot of lawyers, and often when people are sort of coming to the end of their impressive legal career, they'll think, I'd like to do something different. I bet I could teach a clinic. And they'll say this to me, like, I was at the top of my career, and now I'd like to teach a clinic. And I think, can you tell me more about your teaching and what qualifies you to do this?
Right. I always think it's not a retirement job. It is a full-time job. We are dedicated teachers and lawyers.
Yeah, right. I can say from the outside, I know we take very seriously the hiring process for hiring people for this too. So I don't mean that. I'm sure lots of places do. But that's something to be asking about, I think. Where do clinics get their clients? So we have 17 clinics at Michigan. The city of Ann Arbor is a small city. How do you fill the coffers, as it were, with clients?
Yeah, I would say the size of the city has nothing to do with the ability of a clinic to find clients to represent. I mean, fortunately or really unfortunately, there is so much need in this world for free legal representation. Ann Arbor is a relatively expensive city, so many clinic clients do not live in Ann Arbor where the students and the faculty live necessarily, but they live more on the outskirts of Ann Arbor. They live in the towns surrounding Ann Arbor. They live in Detroit. They live in other underserved communities. But really, some of our clinics represent people throughout the entire state, like the Michigan Innocence Clinic, and then we also have an International Transactions Clinic, which represents clients all over the world.
Yes, presumably not in Michigan, or else that name is misleading.
Right.
Okay, so that's very helpful. So you don't have to worry that if you're in a very rural area that you won't have clients.
I am sure there is tons of need in rural areas for free legal representation.
Right, because in fact, I would think the more rural it is, the fewer lawyers actually that are in the community too.
It might be harder, but I don't know. It might be harder to do a transactional clinic in that setting.
That makes sense. Right.
But for free legal services, I cannot imagine there would be a dearth of clients.
So you said people do, serious legal work in a clinic, but can you talk about in detail, what is on offer? What kinds of things might you actually be doing in a clinic, whether not necessarily Michigan, whatever clinic?
Yeah, sure. So different clinics will organize themselves around different populations of people or different practice areas, different areas of law. No matter what, students can expect to engage in the full scope of representation. But for example, in a litigation clinic, in a trial level litigation clinic, students can expect to interview clients, get a sense of the client's values and goals for the representation, draft any pleadings that need to be drafted, write up a complaint, file it with the court, represent that client in negotiations, represent that client in court appearances, and go to trial if necessary, or enter a settlement agreement if necessary. In an appellate clinic, students will do the full scope of an appellate practice.
Okay.
In a transactional clinic, too, I mean, really in all the clinics, students are interacting with their clients, getting a sense of the client's goals, counseling their clients, and then meeting the goals of the representation.
So I know that at Michigan, this is definitely true that the students are flying free, that the professor is there to give advice and guidance, but the students are the lawyers, right? But might there be some kinds of clinics or some at different institutions where maybe the type of work that a student does is more limited, or do you have any thoughts about that?
It is possible that at some schools, or depending on the faculty members, students don't have quite as much autonomy to really take ownership of their cases. I do know, having spent so many years working with clinical colleagues throughout the country, that this really is a fundamental value of clinical legal education, that students first chair the cases. They really take ownership of the cases.
But I always think about these Supreme Court clinics, like they're not going to the Supreme Court.
Right. Okay, let's think it through.
Yeah.
So there could be clinics where students do a lot of the behind the scenes work, but they don't actually appear.
Yeah.
I imagine that students in a Supreme Court clinic are working on briefs, but they're not actually arguing a case in front of the Supreme Court.
Okay.
Though I think in our federal appellate litigation clinic, our students are arguing at the Sixth Circuit.
Yes.
So it really depends on the rules of the court.
Yes, and right. So in general, people won't have to worry about this, but maybe could be worth asking a pointed question or two.
Right. It could be worth asking when students go on a visit to a law school the scope of the responsibility that they'll get in different types of clinics.
That's perfect. That's very helpful. I've always wondered about that. I wanted to ask, I know there's at least one law school, I assume there are multiple, where when you take the clinic, that's all you're doing for that term, just the clinic. At Michigan, we do, you take the clinic, but you also have, one or two other classes depending on your credit obligations. What are the pluses and minuses of each system? How does it work? What are the demands?
Yeah, so I think if a student were in a school where clinic occupied the entire semester, the benefits of that approach is that students can focus solely on their clinic clients and on the class associated with that clinic. It's a very immersive experience. The downside to that model is that I would imagine that students in schools like that don't end up taking more than one clinic. So that clinical opportunity will be their only clinical opportunity, so choose wisely. But at a school like Michigan and many other schools where clinics are typically between 4 and 7 credits, students can take more than one clinic and explore different areas of law, different types of legal practice.
Okay, so that's a good segue into, at Michigan, we have something called a clinic guarantee, which it does not guarantee multiple clinics, but can you tell how that works and questions that a student might want to ask if they're really interested in doing a clinic somewhere?
Yeah, so I know, or I believe this is the case, that students write to you and they want to come to Michigan because they are really, really attached to taking one particular clinic. And I'm sure that is true at schools throughout the country. The beauty of the Michigan model is that we have this clinic guarantee where if a student bids on the clinic that is in their heart, 3 out of 4 eligible semesters, so these are upper level clinics, then we guarantee them a seat in their first or second choice clinic, and really 90% of our students get seated in their first choice clinic. So if they desperately want to come to Michigan to take X clinic, they will get to take that clinic.
Okay. That actually leads me to another question. I know at Michigan we have these 17 clinics that are, for the most part, offered all the time. Like that's just, they're always running. that's not universally the case, right? Because I know that there are schools that offer that list like 30 clinics that they might have, but are they is it the same as at Michigan?
So even if those 30 clinics at some other school were full-time clinics taught by full-time clinical faculty, if they're on rotation, it's just less likely that a student will be able to take that particular clinic that is speaking to them while they are attending that school.
Right.
You just have, and at Michigan, because our clinics are pretty stable,
Right.
we have the clinical guarantee, like if a student comes to Michigan for a particular clinic, they're going to be able to take that clinic.
This may not matter if there are 4 clinics, 5 clinics that you want to take. It may not matter at all. But I guess if you are of your heart set on one, I guess it sounds like it's good to ask questions like, will this definitely come in the 2 years that I can take clinics? Actually, that's another question that I didn't even. So in Michigan, you can take clinics. When can you take clinics at Michigan?
Yeah.
Let me make it a question.
Okay. So the vast majority of our clinics are upper level clinics, meaning they're for 2Ls and 3Ls. And this is really because of our student practice rule under the Michigan court rules. And different states have different rules for when a student is eligible to take a clinic. In Michigan, they have to have completed their first year of law school successfully to take a clinic. So almost all of our clinics are upper level clinics.
Okay.
But you might ask the question, wait, but Debra, we have a 1L clinic. How do we have a 1L clinic when we have the student practice rule?
Are we violating the rules?
Are we violating the rules? No, Sarah.
We are lawyers.
We are
do
not
violate
violating the rules. That's
Got it.
right. So students in that clinic are working on cases where you don't actually have to be a lawyer to work on the case, but they're providing a higher level of assistance and representation because they are law students and because they're being supervised, again, by full-time clinical faculty who are excellent lawyers and excellent teachers.
Okay, that is very helpful. What else would you add that I didn't ask? What should someone, pretend I just got admitted to XYZ law school and ABC law school, and I'm trying to choose between them, and for me, the clinical experience is going to be paramount to my happiness as a law student, or so I believe. What would you tell me to look for?
I would want to know how many clinics are offered at the law school. I might want to know what percentage of the students take a clinic.
Okay.
Like at Michigan, over 80% of our students take a clinic. They're not mandatory. It's just because the program is so strong. I would want to know, are they taught by full-time clinical faculty? Does the school have clinics that interest you, like in serving populations that you feel connected to or want to help or develop skills that you're interested in developing?
Okay, that's great. And just to touch on that one last brief thought. I mentioned at the top that people really love their clinic experience even when they go into very different areas of the law. And maybe you could say something about the clinic that you teach and what people have gone on to do afterwards.
Yeah, I think it's really important for people to know that clinics are for absolutely everyone who intends to go and practice law because the skills are absolutely transferable. So for example, I direct the Pediatric Advocacy Clinic. It's a medical legal partnership clinic. We deal with legal issues affecting child health. Some of the students who take my clinic want to go into health law. Some want to go and represent children. But the vast majority, definitely the majority, are going off into big law. They're going off into private practice. Yeah. And it doesn't matter really for 2 reasons. One, talking to a client and understanding their values and doing legal research and producing written work and arguing to a court or negotiating with opposing counsel, those are skills you will repeat over and over again throughout your career. It doesn't matter if you learn them in the context of a medical legal partnership. And 2, we inspire students. All these students are going to go off if they don't have public interest careers, they're going to go off and do some pro bono work in their lives. And we are giving them like a menu of a pro bono practice that they could engage in when they are out in the world. And so I actually have former students who have started specialized pro bono practices in their law firms, representing students who are facing expulsion, for example, or representing students who are not getting appropriate special education accommodations, because those are cases they worked on in my clinic.
That's really cool. Okay, you know what, Debra, before we close, I sometimes end with a grammar tip. Do you like grammar, Debra?
I love grammar.
You're a lawyer, so
grammar,
you are required by law.
I judge people on their grammar.
Silently, usually, I hope. But
Usually.
Depends. Do you have any grammar tip you would like to, or pet peeve you'd like to air here?
Thank you so much for for asking me that question. Seriously, there are so many students who write like Sarah and I's client, the letter I apostrophe S. That is incorrect. Please don't ever write I apostrophe S as a possessive noun.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting. So what should they say?
Oh. You have to like navigate around it. Like my client, the client that Sarah and I are representing together.
Okay. Couldn't you also say Sarah's apostrophe S and my client?
Yes.
Sarah's and my
that's
client.
Better. Sarah's and my is
If you're
better
really-
than Sarah and I's.
It's better because it's not super
It
duper
doesn't
wrong.
hurt.
Yes. That's a good one. Thank you.
Yes.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
All right. Lots of wisdom being
That was
laid on
public
us.
service.
Forget everything else we said. This is the takeaway. All right. Well, I hope this is useful to those of you who are law school bound and desirous of doing a clinic when you're there. Thank you, Debra. That was really fun.
Thank you.
And yeah, wherever you go, go blue.
Go blue.